20-somethings who are either married or in committed relationships who say their unions are more secure and more honest because they don't believe in monogamy.
I just took off my clothes and I had to do it.
We're talking about swinging, or as it's known now, living in the lifestyle.
We're gonna have to get you some punani.
Technically, an orgy requires a minimum of 6 participants.
What about my three-way?
This is a new generation of swingers.
Waves of it coming at you on Friday, Saturday. By Sunday, your nuts gonna be drained.
Welcome, everyone, to Swingin' Around, Episode 5.
Today we're talking about the jealousy spectrum. I'm JB.
And I'm Cal.
So before we get started with the episode, as we normally do, we'll start off with our little lifestyle news, lifestyle business. So last time we left off, we were talking about going to a holiday party and how we're looking forward to that. So we've done that, gone to the holiday party.
Yeah, we had our Christmas party.
It was pretty fun. And
it was pretty fun.
As we expected, the female Santa outfits were smoking hot.
They were, well, weren't you a little iffy on if they were going to be hot or not, right?
No, I was iffy on if there'd be any male Santa Claus outfits.
Male
and there weren't. There wasn't a single guy in any kind of a male Santa Claus. Although there was a guy wearing all spandex, like spandex black shorts and a spandex black top. It wasn't Christmassy or even holiday at all. It was kind of an odd choice, but the guy had a decent body, so I guess it was okay.
Yeah.
He was also like 6.5 feet tall, which wouldn't work for me because I'm on the short side.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. We had dinner beforehand at a bar just across the street from where the hotel party was taking place. That was pretty fun. Get to know some of the couples that we hung out with.
Yeah, I think there was maybe like 10 couples or so that were there.
Well, there was 2 tables, and we were at the late arrivals table.
I suppose 10 couples at our table, and there's another table.
Yeah,
that had been there. It was pretty. I mean, you could tell when we walked in the couples that were our tables. It was in a regular everyday bar and grill. So there was just normal people at the place as well, and we had a bunch of tables reserved in the back, and you could immediately tell who our crowd was because the women were all dressed sexily, and the guys, you could tell, had all put a little effort into what they were wearing too. So
yeah, you can
tell.
we
were the hot group.
The swinger crowd, you can tell that there's something about that group.
There's some effort put in. Yeah, they're all fun and flirtatious, and it's a good group to be a part of.
And it's always fun to hear everybody's stories, getting to know everybody and talk to people, because I don't think there was nobody there at the dinner who we had met before.
Only the leaders of the club who arranged the parties.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, nobody there that we'd met before, but everyone was nice. And it was a good opportunity to get to know some people in a more intimate setting before moving on to the party, which is a lot of loud music and dancing. And, of course, there's still a lot of flirting and just talking and mingling, but it's not as intimate because you have to talk so loud over the music and whatnot.
We had a funny realization at the dinner, right, or immediately following the dinner, that because we still feel like we're the new couple who's been in the lifestyle for only a couple of years, but we came away from that dinner feeling like we were the couple who had been in it forever.
It's true, yeah. It seemed like everybody that was around us had only gone to 1 or 2 parties, or they'd only been in the lifestyle for a few months. And here we are with all these stories and experiences, having been in the lifestyle for a couple of years, and we were the ones who were the experienced couple at our table. It was interesting having the tables turn.
It was probably about the first time where that's happened, where you stop feeling like, I mean, I've known that we haven't been newbies for a little while, but I really felt like we were the experienced ones then. And
yeah, absolutely.
It was just interesting being in that position.
I'm kind of looking forward to ushering some newer couples into the lifestyle too, and showing them the ropes and watching them evolve. I'm looking forward to that a lot. Maybe taking a little swinger virginity.
That would be fun.
That's kind of hot.
That is pretty hot.
Yeah, I agree. And the one other thing that happened at this party that hasn't really happened to us in the past is I turn around and there's a guy that I recognize, and I realize I recognize him from our vanilla lifestyle.
Oh yeah,
I actually ran into a former coworker.
That is,
yeah. It's I recently changed jobs within the last couple of months, and of course, it happened to be a guy that I used to work with. It wasn't somebody that I worked closely with. We just happened to work at the same company, but still, it was like a holy shit moment. My heart sank, and I was like, "Oh God, my secret's out." And then I thought about it and realized I had no idea that this guy was a swinger when I worked with him. There was never any inclination, which means that his secret is equally, you know, I'll keep his secret just as much as he'll have to keep mine. Otherwise, he's outed too. So,
Yeah, that was the funniest thing.
My heart dropped for a moment until I realized, like, of course he's not going to tell about me because he's going to have to out himself in doing so.
Exactly, and plus it was a former coworker, so it's not the same as worrying about somebody at your current job.
It's not the same as your current job, but at the same time, it's a company that I left on good terms, and I don't know. I could see myself eventually going back if times were ever right or appropriate. It's not a company that I ever want to burn a bridge down with.
That's true.
So it's not a rumor that I would want to be spread, even though I'm not currently there.
Yeah, it's funny, or it's easy for me to sit back and laugh at the situation, but I guess it would be pretty nerve-wracking to see somebody from a current job or a former job that you haven't left for all that long. It was only a few months ago, I think.
Yeah, and I wasn't quite sure how to approach it or talk about it. My inclination, we both saw each other, we made eye contact, we gave each other the kind of head nod, and then it was the nod and turn and go the other opposite direction and avoid each other. And then, of course, you have to go and bump into the girl that he's with and then have to apologize for bumping into her and strike up a conversation and bring out all the awkwardness.
Yeah, but still, it was fine. Plus, it's both of your secrets.
It's true, yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't want it to get out.
No, I'm sure he
don't
wouldn't.
want it to get out.
Yep.
But, and like you said, you were both in the lifestyle. Well, I mean, you don't know for sure that he was, but you were in the lifestyle. And
yeah, I have no idea if he is or isn't.
Nobody at your job...
I mean, we've been to these parties a few times and hadn't seen him before.
Nobody at your job had any idea, and this individual might have been. We just might not have seen him at parties yet, or maybe this was his first party. Who knows? But
yeah, I think my secret's safe with him because his secret's certainly safe with me. I'm not about to say anything.
And you said that you had no idea that he was in it either.
Not at all. He was always a good dresser, but that doesn't mean a good dresser does not equate to swinger. I mean, swingers are good dressers typically, yes, but it doesn't mean if you dress well that you are a swinger.
They typically try to dress to impress.
Exactly.
So
that was a new experience.
The other thing is that we started to get some emails from some very sexy listeners.
We did.
We've had a few emails roll in, and I can say for a fact that we have some very sexy listeners out there.
We do. Ow, ow.
So thanks for writing and the kind words on the show, and please keep writing and keep sending those pictures.
Keep giving us your feedback. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, that's great. And if you ever have any comments, suggestions, or topics or anything you'd like to hear about, send us a line.
Yep. So with that, how about we get on to the topic of today's show?
Sounds good.
Which is the jealousy spectrum. And we're not just calling it jealousy because it really is truly a spectrum. And really, we think of it as a sliding scale where you can start off with many vanilla couples where, especially what you see on sitcoms, where the women get mad at the men even for looking or checking out at another woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the most basic level of jealousy out there, where you can't even trust your partner to check out the ass of another girl.
Well, I think jealousy, it's taken a few shows to get us here, but jealousy is just about one of the most important shows that we could topics that we could have to talk about, because I think it's the root of all evil in terms of why people are afraid or concerned about getting into this lifestyle, have negative connotations with individuals who are in the lifestyle, and nothing good comes from jealousy. There's absolutely nothing good that comes from jealousy, and like you said, we're going to be talking about the spectrum from all the way from being completely jealous to the complete opposite end of that spectrum. And then anywhere in between. You can be anywhere in between, and you can be at one point and then be at a different point at a completely different time. You're not always going to be at the same point.
Yeah, it comes back to your comfort level and what you're comfortable with your partner doing and what you're comfortable seeing happen with your partner. And I know for me, when we first started talking about getting into the lifestyle, jealousy was my first real concern. Was I don't know if I can see you kissing another woman and be okay with it. I don't know if I could see you touching another woman's breasts and be okay with it, because it's not me and it's only supposed to be me. And the more you think about it, well, why do I feel that way? Part of that was because, well, we're married. Well, married means we're supposed to be in a monogamous relationship. We're only supposed to have feelings and touch each other, and that's what society tells you.
Mm-hmm.
But on a really intimate level, does it matter? Do I really care if you kiss another woman if you're not emotionally attached to them? No, I don't. But I thought I did. And that's one of the first barriers to getting into swinging, is what you are and are not comfortable with, and what, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it is society that tells us, it sort of guides people along the path of starting a relationship and how you should feel, and that person should be only yours. And that's usually a pretty good, it works out fine when people are first getting into the relationship and getting established.
Right, and I think that's how it should be when you're first getting established. I think couples, when they're first becoming a couple, need to be monogamous to gain that trust with each other.
I don't think that they necessarily need to, but I think most do. I think I can't say that there's not couples out there who they're just wired to be non-monogamous right from the get-go, and that'll work. But I would say for the majority of couples, I know for us,
yeah,
it was a journey to becoming non-monogamous, but with the starting point being monogamous, and to really I think it worked out best to really be able to get to know the person that you're starting a new relationship with, and then starting to open things up. And I think that that's part of where the problem with jealousy comes in, because there's not only the societal stigma that you're supposed to be monogamous and this person is supposed to be the only person who's going to satisfy all of your needs, all of your desires, and you're not going to want to look,
which is ridiculous.
Your eyes are not going to go anywhere, which is
it's crazy to believe
ridiculous.
That's how you would ever be. Yeah.
But so if we use ourselves as an example, we are a monogamous couple who work very hard at establishing our own relationship, and that's when you start to ingrain this person's mind, and then when you consider opening up, or consider the barriers to opening up, it's that jealousy that was formed, I think, when your relationship was first getting going, that causes you.
Yeah, well, I guess for me what it comes down to is just how does it make me feel? Jealousy is a form of discomfort with seeing you perform acts that I like it's the fear of losing you. I guess I think is a big one. Or the fear of not being the best. Or the fear of not being the only one in your life anymore, like not being your number one. I think that's a big concern for people.
What I was trying to say actually is that you spend weeks, months, or years establishing that you're the only one, you're the one that I want to be with, you're the one that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I want to get married to. And so you spend all that time developing that, and then you have to not throw it away, but you have to learn to overcome all of that.
Yeah, you have to break it down, and that's why for us, and it's not like this for polyamorous people, and maybe even some swinging people, but for us it's important to maintain the emotional connection only with each other, because that's really what our couple and our relationship is about, is the emotional connection that you and I have with each other, and everything else that we do is sexual, and we know that it's only sexual, and I think that's what's enabled us to work through jealousy, is the knowing that we're not bonding with other people on an emotional level. So, I mean, for me, jealousy is really a feeling uncomfortable, or seeing you do things and having like a feeling of being scared, or self-consciousness, or even maybe a little bit of maybe even a lack of self-esteem. I think some people might experience, and I think all of those things can contribute to jealousy. It's just kind of a trust thing, I think, is what causes jealousy. And
it also comes down to just having that. Well, it comes down to having that comfort that this person is not going to leave me. This person is content, and not just content, but incredibly happy with where the relationship's at. And it's jealousy challenges that. It feels like an innate emotion that you just have to overcome, that this person, you are so secure in your relationship that you're able to overcome that. And I know that's a really big boundary. I think the idea of trying to overcome jealousy and issues concerning jealousy is a barrier that keeps a lot of individuals from even thinking about coming into the swinging lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I mean,
because they don't think they can even overcome it.
That reminds me of our first swinging experience, where we had a big problem with jealousy. We were at a party. It was our very first time being at a party, and we thought we had outlined our rules pretty well. it turned out that we hadn't outlined our rules pretty well. So we went to the party. We danced with each other and we mingled a little bit, not a whole lot because we were both kind of nervous about how things were going. And then we were at the after party, and I think we might have told the story in a previous episode, I'm not sure, but at the after party, we didn't really know, where to go, what rooms were the true after party versus which rooms were just individuals who had their door open, and we were just wandering around exploring to see what things were all about. We wandered into a room where there were a couple of couples going at it, and we decided to start having sex on the bed next to some of the other couples. I think there was a couple of women who were making out with each other, and I think there was a naked guy there who was just watching, and Cal and I decided to start having sex on one of the beds, and Cal got off for a second, and one of the women started to blow him. We hadn't talked about that, and I got very jealous because it wasn't something that I was expecting. I didn't know how to feel about another woman's lips on my husband's cock. It wasn't something I was comfortable with yet because we hadn't talked about it. And rather than stopping the situation, I just got up and left. I got really upset and really emotional. Cal followed after me, and we proceeded to have a huge argument in the hotel room. I mean, it was huge. And to the point where we were like, should we even be together? I think we were both, pretty drunk at the time, too. So there never was really any question about if we were going to stay together or not. But at the end of the day, it was a big fight, and it was because something happened that I wasn't ready for, and really what it came down to is I was jealous that he was receiving this oral action and it hadn't been okayed with me. Now, if that kind of thing were to happen, I'd be perfectly fine with it, because even then I was probably okay with it, but we hadn't discussed it first.
Well, that gets to what it's become, as time's gone on, it's become more and more obvious that you just have to be mentally prepared for what might happen and prepare yourself, because when you're first getting going and you don't know, maybe you haven't talked about your rules. I know for that party we hadn't talked about our rules, or we didn't know what we needed to talk about. We clearly didn't have the communication, and we hadn't talked about things at that point enough. And then that happens, and then you go, whoa, hold on, and then you back up, and then you talk about it, and you think, well, why did that upset me? And
that's where I did something wrong, is because as soon as I was upset with what was going on, I should have stopped it. I think that's a big thing that couples need to think about and be aware of, is if at any time your partner is doing something you're uncomfortable with, don't do what I did and just leave. I think that was a bad mistake.
Well,
I did that in leaving, because I think that made the emotions worse.
Yeah.
It escalated the situation.
Yeah, but what I would say is if you can avoid those situations to begin with, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to find out the hard way. Something's going to happen that's going to push the boundaries, that's going to make one person jealous, and then it's going to, hopefully, like it did with us, spark even more conversation that gets you to be more comfortable with what could happen, and then you have conversations, well, how would we feel if this happened? How would we feel if that happened?
I mean, after that happened, I doubted if I ever wanted to even be in the lifestyle for a while. I didn't know if we could handle it, if I could handle it.
Well, I think part of it's, too, is because I don't think you had given it, I don't think either one of us had truly given it thought, well, how would we truly feel if this actually happens?
Right.
And you have to mentally prepare yourself, because there's been other things that have come up that I know a little while ago, the first time you were blowing somebody and they finished a little bit in your mouth, and that really bothered me at first. And I thought about it, and I was able to process it and think, well, why did that bother me? And being able to work through that on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've gotten to the point where that's fine. It's okay, but it's not something that had come up before, and I just hadn't processed it. I think jealousy is such a powerful thing you have to overcome. I don't think you can just overcome it. You have to think about these scenarios.
You have to realize why.
And realize I think I actually am okay with that. But when it's something you haven't thought about before, the innate societal values, just like at the hotel party when I was getting blown, and that was the huge problem then.
Yeah, and for me the problem was, that's my husband. What are you doing? Your husband's not supposed to be blown by another person. That started off, and then it led down the road of, what if she's better than me? What if he likes blowjobs from other women more? What if he doesn't want to be with me anymore? It was all those insecurities that started to crop up, which, since we've been in the lifestyle, I've realized you're not going anywhere. You're my man. You're always going to be my man. And that's how it is for couples in the lifestyle. You have to be secure in your relationship, and that security is what will allow you to work through your jealousy issues.
And that's how it was for me with you and the cum in your mouth. I asked myself, well, why?
Now let's know. My preference would have not to have been to have the cum in my mouth.
Well, it's going to happen though.
It is. It's true. You can't avoid it.
And even without even pre-cum, I'm sure I'm sure plenty of women have gotten my pre-cum, and you've gotten pre-cum from other guys. It's just explicit. Cum hadn't happened, even though we had been in the lifestyle for a while. That scenario hadn't happened on purpose.
I'm just that good, baby. It can't be avoided.
We've made sure that we made sure that didn't happen with this particular individual. You were doing a good job. You were doing a real good job, apparently.
It snuck up on me too. So.
And I had to work through it for myself and think, well, why did that bother me? And it's at first it's like, well, that's something very intimate, and then I think, well, is it any more intimate than when I'm eating a woman out and I get pussy juice all over myself? And it's
although you haven't had a woman squirt in your face, that might be different.
No, yeah, I haven't had that yet, and it might be different, but just being able to work through these things on your own terms, and for us, it's especially for me, I almost have to work through it as it comes up, which is unfortunate. But then you can, it's like making a mistake. You get jealous at something, then you work through it, and then that doesn't happen again. That's not to say it won't happen again, but it's the old thing, the old adage that you make a mistake. It's okay as long as you don't make it again. I get jealous at one thing, then I mentally work through it, and we talk about it, and realize that all the reasons why it could or would bother me, they're all insignificant and they don't matter.
Right.
And they're just barriers to having fun. Barriers to having fun, barriers that point out insecurities. I guess in one sense, having the jealousy has been able to. I wish I didn't have it in the first place, but having the jealousy has and it's given me the opportunity to work through it. I've had something we've learned about ourselves. Yeah. You learn about yourself when you have to work through jealousy. Why?
I think you can learn from other people as well, though, because there's one particular couple that I'm thinking of in particular that we've swung with before, where their rules seem to change by the minute on the fly as we're with them, where the husband actually asks for permission. Can I touch her breasts? And sometimes the wife will say yes, and sometimes she'll say no. Or the husband will say, can I kiss her? Or can I do this? Or can I do that? And the rules change based on the wife's emotions at that particular time and place. And I think that's a big insecurity
That couple
thing.
that you're talking about, we had a good time with them, playing with them. Nothing ever got beyond
Same room
swap.
sex.
No, we didn't even do any.
We didn't even soft swap with them. There's too much insecurity. We didn't even want to go down that road.
There was a little bit of hand stuff that was going on, but yeah, it's not.
But even then, it was the husband touching me, and the wife. You could see it when she found out. She was not.
It's not uncommon for individuals to ask permission from the opposite partner or the other, like for the male partner to ask you. Can I touch your wife or whatever? Yeah, can I touch you? Really, you that's a good thing. You should that. But to have to ask your significant other, but when you have to ask your own spouse, what that shows me is that you haven't talked out your rules enough. That it's in the moment where you're making it up, and that is where problems and jealousy are going to come in. And when the answer changes, where sometimes it's yes and sometimes it's no. That leads me to believe that there's some insecurity in that relationship where if the wife is sometimes okay with it, but then sometimes not, why isn't she sometimes okay with it? What's leading to her to sometimes say no? Well, I think what it is... And that is an insecurity, like, oh, he might be enjoying it too much. I've let him do it too much. I think what it is that... So I'm going to use this couple as an example. What I think the problem was with her in particular is that she hadn't decided in her own mind. They haven't discussed their rules and established where their rules was. So she was making it up on the fly. And I think we're in this scenario. I don't want to let him down, so I'll let him do this. But then it's like, oh, I've let him do it too much. Then I wasn't really comfortable with that. So hold on, next time I'll back off. I think it just comes down to not having communicated the rules. Yeah. I wonder if that's an incredibly clear sign that the rules haven't been talked about. Yep. When in the moment you're asking your own spouse, is this okay? That should be discussions that happen before the party, before the meetup. Yeah, and I wonder if it was his idea to get into the lifestyle and he sort of pushed her into it, and so she was still bringing along some discomfort and some whatever baggage she had, if she was still dragging it along, that she was begrudgingly entering in the lifestyle to keep him happy. Now, the thing I could see coming up where in the moment you ask your spouse is maybe something something is just out of the ordinary comes up, and it isn't something you've talked about. But
yeah, if you don't have a rule currently established for whatever the scenario is, you most definitely need to ask. And
exactly.
You need to constantly be evaluating
but
your rules.
For simple things, kissing, basic touching, those are things that should have. They're not something. They're actions that are to be expected to happen. They're not something that's gonna happen just off the fly that you wouldn't have ever considered happening. So that's definitely something you should have talked about.
Kissing is an interesting one, though, because we've talked about this before, because kissing is a sexual act, but it can also be a very intimate act. It can go either way or sometimes both. So kissing, I know we've had to be careful about with some ground rules, because you can make out with someone and have it be completely sexual, but you can also make out with someone and have it be intimate and have it be more than sexual, but be emotional as well. And what you and I came down to was, well, when is it emotional and when is it only sexual? And really the best way that we could say it was to use your judgment and don't make out for too long.
Yeah, just use your judgment. And it comes down to, for us, more the person who's doing the making out. If we're starting to feel that the other person is that you've been making out a little bit too long,
or that you've been ignoring your partner too. That's a big one.
I think that's what it all comes down to too. Is that you're not ignoring your partner. That your partner doesn't feel as if they're being left out. I don't know if there's
and that doesn't mean that your partner has to be swapping with someone else at the time.
A particular time limit that you want to put on it per se. But if you and your partner, I know me and you should be in tune. And if you kind of get the sense that, maybe I've been spending too much time with this individual and I need to go back to my wife. I need to give her some love. And
and that's happened before where let's say we're meeting up with a new couple. We've never hung out with them before, so we're taking the time to flirt with them like you would on a first date. Sometimes that can happen where maybe you're spending more time than usual, maybe 70-80% of the time with the other couple, with the female or the male of the other couple. You always need to go back to home base and make sure that, number one, your significant other doesn't feel like they're taking one for the team, and number two, that they're comfortable with the amount of time that you're spending with the other person, because really, at least for us, it comes down to making a sexual connection and enjoying the time you're spending with the other person, but not so much so that you're making that emotional bond.
And obviously that's us, because there are swingers out there who fall a little bit more into the poly side of things, where that emotional connection is something that they are looking for. But for us, we're looking for friends, but we aren't looking for that emotional connection where it starts to lean towards more of the poly side of things. I
don't want to start to fall in love with you.
I feel like we're definitely...
Well, Cal, I do, but somebody else. I'm not looking for love. I've found love with you.
I feel like we're definitely from what I'm talking to other people, that's definitely an old school swinger mentality, but I think I'm okay with that. I think that's where me and you, our comfort level's at, and that's what's most important, is where you and your spouse's comfort level's at. And for us, it is keeping a little bit of a distance, not having that emotional connection.
Yeah, that's been kind of a ground rule from day one, although our other rules have changed. Our jealousy story has evolved significantly since when we started swinging to where we're at now. And I think we have, I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know if other people find it interesting, but as I mentioned before, I mean, we started off where I couldn't see this other woman sucking Cal without having an issue with it. And now here I am. We went to not the most recent party, but the Halloween party we were at. Some woman just whipped out Cal's cock and started sucking it right in the middle of a party, and I thought it was hot. So, I mean, it's a complete 180 from where we were before.
I think it goes back to what we were saying, where you have to work through it and realize, because as shitty as it is, I think the default setting on people, be it from society, our values, our inherent values, but our default setting is to be jealous.
Right.
And so
the question is, well, why is that our default setting? And for me, it comes down to, initially that default setting was, number one, because of society, but I think it's lame to blame society and only society. It's not just society's fault. It's also partially my own insecurity of, like I mentioned before, what if he finds another cock? What if he finds another pussy that he likes better? What if he finds another woman that he likes better? And I've had to work through talking to you and talking just through with myself that you're not going to leave me. That's what it's had to come down to, is the comfort in almost the vulnerability that you put yourself out there and say, you lay it all on the table and say, look, you can do this with other people. I'm going to do other things with other people too. But at the end of the day, we have to come back to each other. That's really what's made me able to work through the jealousy.
It's being completely secure with each other as a couple. That, just like you said, there's no fear of the other person leaving you, which is the underlying fear that this person, you're becoming less in this person's eyes because they're, doing these sex acts with this other individual, that the connection that you two have is becoming less important.
Right. And
it's learning that that's not the case. That is, I feel like, every swinger's journey.
I think the other part of it, too, is to stop being afraid that you're not the best at something. Like, you have to realize that you're not going to be the best at everything to your partner. It's not going to happen. You might find another woman who gives a better blowjob than I do, but it's not going to be the same blowjob. It's not going to feel the same. It's not coming from me. You might find, I don't know if you'll ever find another pussy that you prefer. Maybe there's a super tight pussy out there that you like better. I know you're going to find tits that you like better than mine. I'm not the biggest in the world. But at the same time, they're not mine because you're in love with me. And that's what makes it different. And so part of it for me is losing that fear of not being the best you've ever had, because I'm not going to be. And not only losing that fear, but embracing the fact that you can now experience pleasure in ways that I can't provide. Pleasure in threesomes, pleasure in just that thrill and exhilaration of having sex with another person. Even if it's not good sex, just the first time you're with a different person, I think, is exhilarating enough.
Mm-hmm. And there is that cliche. For me, it comes back to the cliche, which I know I've mentioned before, but that you have your favorite food, and that's not all you want.
It's your favorite food, but you still need a variety.
You need a variety, and it's working your way through the jealousy spectrum, which is something I want to actually talk a little bit more about specifically, is the spectrum. It's working your way through that spectrum and getting from one end. I would say that it's pretty a safe bet that most couples start at jealousy, and
kind of in vanilla land, like we were talking about, where even minute things might make you jealous.
Yes. And then the complete opposite end of the jealousy spectrum, which we haven't really talked about yet, but it's the goal, it's what you strive to get to, is we've come to learn about this term, which, from our understanding, comes from the poly side of things, is compersion, which is where jealousy exemplifies the insecurities that you feel. Compersion is deriving pleasure in your partner finding pleasure, in your partner having pleasure, being completely content that they are receiving pleasure, regardless of who's doing it, regardless of what's happening. Just the fact that they are getting pleasure, you're getting enjoyment from that.
Right, and I think I've said this before, but I love the male orgasm. I watch gay sex. I love to see a man come. So obviously I love to see you come, but it hasn't been until recently that I've been okay with seeing, that I would be okay with seeing you come at the hands of another woman. And it's getting through that jealousy. It's realizing he's having a good time. Who cares if I'm the one who's doing it to him? He's still coming home with me tonight.
That's exactly right. Regardless of what happens at all, I'm going home with you and you're going home with me, and nothing's going to change that. And it's learning that nothing's going to change that gets you over those humps, those jealousy humps that you always have to get over.
I think there's still going to be couples out there who just don't get over it, who can't. I don't think every couple is going to be able to get over the hurdle, because I think there's people who aren't necessarily emotionally intelligent enough with themselves to figure out why they're jealous. And I think there's plenty of people out there who get jealous and then just shut down and say, nope, not going to do it. It makes me feel jealous. That's the end of the story, and don't work through it.
Well, I'll say there's probably...
And I think they're missing out.
There's probably tons and tons of couples out there who won't get to that point, but I don't think there's anybody out there who can't get to that point. And I know, even between us, I'm the one who a lot of the times has had us explore why we feel a certain way, and that's been difficult for you. I mean, even outside of this podcast, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to start this up, is just we have these conversations together. Why not have these conversations with us and all of our listeners?
It's true. He does push me beyond my comfort zone pretty frequently. More often in other topics than sex. I think sexual topics I am pretty comfortable. It's usually other things that I have a hard time with. But
there's been a lot of throughout our time in swinging. There's been a lot of conversations about you really have to explore why do I feel a certain way, and for a lot of people, diving into that part of their psyche is difficult. Is not something that they might do all the time. That's just something that I actually do quite a bit in all aspects of my life. I have a background in psychology. It's not what I do, but I have background in it. And those types of things, what's going on in the brain, is always what's on the forefront. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I think she's feeling this way? What do I need to do to change the way I feel? Or am I content with how I feel? I just want to know why I feel that.
And my brain just doesn't think
those
that way. I'm a math and science girl through and through, so you can see he pushes me a lot.
Those aren't concrete terms. Those are, those...
Right, but you can imagine couples out there who are more like me and less like you, who just won't work through those barriers.
Exactly.
I think it'll happen.
I don't think that... Like I said, I think there's a lot of couples who won't make it there, but it's not that they can't. If they were to talk to the right person,
now you're dealing with semantics, won't versus can't. To me,
no.
I was meaning can't by they've put up their own physical barriers, so therefore they can't do it. They don't have the mental capacity to work through it. I mean,
that's a classic example of where my psychology background comes into play quite a bit, because it is semantics, but there actually is a very distinct difference there. Because given the right person, let's just say they were to have a deep conversation with a therapist about their insecurities, because let's face it, everybody has jealousy because of their insecurities, and it's usually not life detrimental where they're gonna seek out a therapist, but almost everyone could sit down with a therapist and talk about insecurities in their life, be it anything from daily life to their sexual life to anything. And if they were to sit down with the right individual, maybe the right individual could push them to have these conversations.
I suppose so.
So I think, while you're right...
I don't know how many couples out there are going to go to a therapist because they want to swing.
No, and I agree. But what I'm saying is that you kind of brushed it off that, saying won't and can't is almost the same thing. I actually think there are pretty significant differences, because in potential... the potential is there. It's not being realized. It's not that they're emotionally incapable of doing it. It's that given the resources that they have, they're incapable of doing it. But given the right resources, the right person to talk to, the right person to nudge them and push them and ask them the right questions, the tough
I suppose
questions.
so. I just don't think that there's going to be swingers who do that or seek out those couples who seek out those resources just so they have the capability of swinging.
Well,
unless they're a couple that's in the area where they're actually going to break up because of it. Which, I'm sure there's couples out there that are like that it's we need to see a therapist, there's something wrong in our relationship, and what comes to light is that one of them wants to swing. That's
I agree.
Possible.
I just wanted to... It actually isn't an insignificant distinction that I was trying to make, so...
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the other things that I want to talk about relative to the jealousy spectrum is how it's ever-changing. So, we just spent a lot of time talking about how couples can evolve on the spectrum, but I think we also need to make note that you can actually move backwards in the spectrum too. So you may make advances, and let's say a couple initially starts off as same room sex only, and then they move to increase their comfort zone and become soft swap, and then maybe eventually they become full swap. That's not necessarily always permanent. I think that there can be things that happen in a person's life that can add insecurities back that you've initially weren't there, and actually cause a couple to move backwards in the spectrum or have to reevaluate their rules and maybe increase boundaries a little bit more.
Oh, most definitely. It's a fluid spectrum. What you're okay with. There could be, like you mentioned, something significant that happens in somebody's life that makes them go backwards, but it could just be the way you're feeling that day. You're just not feeling comfortable with with maybe what you were.
Yeah.
And because insecurities rear their ugly head all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me as a female, it could be something as simple as I feel chubby today. I mean, I hate to say it, I'm not that much of an insecure woman. Don't get me wrong, but something like that can definitely rear its head in any given day or time. Or I think women after childbirth, especially, can become that way where maybe you've been a year out of the lifestyle, you're getting back into it, but you want to move slowly again.
Exactly, and so it's difficult, but you shouldn't be frustrated if that happens to you, or if that happens to your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
If your spouse is okay with one thing, then they're not for whatever reason. You just have to respect your spouse and talk about it.
But I think it comes down to you also need to be consistent with a given rule at, whatever party or whatever it is you're at. Not like that other couple that we mentioned that had to ask permission every 2 seconds, where their answer was constantly changing. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I don't think the jealousy spectrum changes that quickly, but it can change from day to day or event to event. And I think it also depends on the couple that you're with, or the couples that you're with, because if one person, if I start to feel that maybe you're becoming more emotionally attached, or actually what we've experienced more recently is the female in one of the couples we were hanging out with seems to be getting more emotionally attached to you. And for me, that was a deal breaker. And so rules had to change specific to that couple because we didn't want that emotional attachment to happen. There was some clinginess actually happening that I was not comfortable with, and it turns out you weren't comfortable with it either.
Mm-hmm. And that's not something to have a conversation right now, but I think even that is insecurities that we have. I think the fact we mentioned today that we're not comfortable with the emotional attachment, but that's something for another day for a conversation as well. What would it matter if we like a couple, what would the consequence be if the woman is emotionally attached to me or the guy's emotionally attached to you?
Yeah, and I guess I didn't have any problem. I knew you weren't emotionally attached to her. I had no concern of that. It was the consequences of her being attached to you that I just didn't want to deal with.
Exactly.
If that would prevent us from being able to swing with other couples, if they would actually be essentially a form of a cock block, that's what I didn't want.
So, I mean, don't get us wrong. We definitely have things to talk about just like that. There's always things to talk about. I don't feel like there's every scenario. There's always new things.
Oh yeah, after every party there's something to talk about.
Because
the most recent party we were at, we were flirting with probably 4 or 5 different couples, and I'm sure there was something that came up that's worth noting.
Because I have to recognize, even though we're both at the point where we want it to be completely sexual and not emotionally attached, there's insecurity there. I mean, people listening earlier, 20 minutes ago, are probably thinking, "Oh, when we said that's just insecurity," and I recognize that it is, and I don't. But the thing is, I don't know if I want to be at the point where I'm okay with
everything.
with emotional attachment, because that really is leading towards the poly side. I don't know. I mean, that's just things that we have to think about for ourselves, and I'm sure that those topics will come up on the podcast.
I don't see not wanting emotional attachment as a form of insecurity. I think that's more of a rule that we're just setting.
But why is it a rule?
I suppose you're right. That's topic for another podcast. We're not
Exactly.
going to get into that here.
Yeah. We're not going to do it right now, but because I'll just say this.
This is him pushing me into new boundaries.
We have rules for a reason, and that's a perfect example of not becoming emotionally attached. Is a perfect example of a rule that I think we have that we're both very comfortable having, but that we haven't truly talked about exactly why we want that rule. What would happen if we didn't have that rule? And if we didn't have that rule, what could come of it, and what would those outcomes be? So, I mean, that's a whole topic of conversation right there.
And honestly, I don't know if I'm ready for that conversation yet. So
yeah. I just wanted to. I felt like that was a little bit of an elephant in the room that we've stated that.
Well, yeah, and we don't want to be hypocrites either.
I mean, we have our own insecurities, and that is definitely one. Now, I'll point out that there's a distinction that I want to make that I'm not sure if I want to be. I want to be okay with almost everything, but that doesn't mean that I want everything to happen. Because my goal is to get jealousy completely out of my life and to be.
I don't know it'll ever be 100%
I want
completely
complete
gone.
compersion.
I think it's gonna rear its ugly
No, I
head every
agree.
now
I
and
agree.
then. It's never gonna go away 100%.
That's the pie in the sky goal, though, is to have no jealousy, and so that would mean who cares if there's emotional attachments? I guess is what that would mean, but I don't truly know if I actually want emotional attachments. I mean, those are things I have to work out, and me and you have to work out. So,
and I guess the other question might be too is, are we capable of emotional attachment with anybody else? Do we even have the time or the time to input that, to have that even happen?
yeah, but definitely.
Is it even a concern that it could happen?
Definitely a topic for off-the-air talk between me and you and the whole show, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I can already tell.
I don't know when that show is going to happen.
No. Probably after we've already figured these things out for ourselves, because I'm sure
Right.
listeners are going to be asking us about that. So I think it's probably time to... Is it time to move on?
I think it's time to move on. I think we've covered jealousy pretty well, or at least our version of the jealousy spectrum and working through jealousy and how we've gotten through it.
And jealousy is always going to come up. It's such a huge topic.
It's not anything to be ashamed of, but it's something to be aware of and to bring up with your partner and to talk about, for sure.
Exactly.
So with that, we're going to move on to some sexy news.
All the American troops pulling out help the situation?
No. So if you think you want the money shot of them with their arms in the air, you're going to get it. It's in both of their self-interest right now.
You say the money shot?
The money shot, yeah.
And Belinda, I just can't understand how something so small can be so impressive.
Well, Mark, you would know about that.
So today we have 3 Sex in the News topics that are... 2 of them are pretty technologically based, and the last one is a little bit more sad. But I'll start off with the sad one. There was a woman, Gretchen Malonen, who was 39 in Tampa Bay. She suffered from what is called persistent genital arousal disorder.
It's crazy.
Where you are just continually sexually aroused. And she had been suffering from that for 16 years.
Now, my first thought with this was, oh man, being constantly aroused, that's awesome. But then when you think about it, it's all the time. It never turns off. That's gotta play a real hindrance in your life where you're just constantly wanting to play with yourself or just wanting to turn it off at some point so you can relax and shut down.
Exactly. I mean, you're at work. You're just your everyday life. You're always sexually aroused.
Just always hot and bothered.
And
that'd be difficult.
It would be incredibly difficult. And after suffering for 16 years, she just recently committed suicide.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
She had 2 previously failed attempts prior, and this time she unfortunately succeeded.
Yeah,
but
it's not something that you think about in the reverse. There's sexual arousal drugs and stimulants to make people sexually aroused, but you never think about the converse of that, where you're actually trying to turn someone off. So I wonder what types of surgical procedures or medications, if anything, is out there to try and help people like that. It's a sad situation.
The article that I read stated that the doctors believe it's caused from malfunctioning nerves, which makes sense. It is nerves that make you feel, that sexual arousal in your genitals. I mean, being sexually aroused is emotional as well, but there is that intense physical
nature to it,
arousal. And I mean, I even know that after I finished with a blowjob, or you finished me, that I want you off my cock. I want you off my cock.
Sometimes I try and extend it a little bit. I'll give you an extra bob or 2, and you just cannot handle that.
The stimulation is too much, and I liken her scenario to that, just 24/7, and that actually no part of that sounds enjoyable.
16 years, whew, yeah. That's sad.
So the next news item is a little bit more fun. A company, a California-based startup called Sinful Robot, is developing a fully immersive virtual reality sex game.
That's cool. Now, fully immersive meaning all of your vision, your thoughts, your sound.
Yeah, they're using the I believe it's pronounced the Oculus headset, which was like a virtual reality head mount that covers your eyes and your ears and fully immerses the senses And
it's too bad it doesn't fully immerse your pussy or your cock. Because
No,
I mean, what good does it do if it turns you
Well,
on
they're-
unless you're playing? You got to be playing with yourself.
Sinful Robots is just the software manufacturer. They don't manufacture the actual headset. The headset is like a PC where anybody can develop software for it.
So they put this game on it that so it's like you're being. I guess it's like you're in a porn.
Yeah, it could, the potential could be that it could be anything. It reminds me of the.
But it's not going to play with your cock for you.
No,
You're still going to have to do that.
But you could have. In the virtual reality, what you're seeing is a woman playing with your cock. Maybe they have an accessory that, because I know there already is a computer software hardware combo where you'll watch a porn and you'll place a sleeve over your cock and
and it moves
it'll try to simulate what the girl's doing. So maybe that in conjunction with the Oculus headset. Which actually
make you feel like you're actually being boned.
The virtual reality headset I believe it was only last year that it was a Kickstarter program that they only needed to raise $250,000, I believe.
That's not much.
They got $2.4 million.
Holy cow! That technology better be really good.
We haven't done any of it. Kickstarter has blown up. I know the Sinful Robot, the virtual reality game, isn't Kickstarter as far as I know right now, but the headset itself was, and Kickstarter, that's really blown up in the last year, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting way and a great way for starting companies to get their idea out there and make some cash.
Yeah, I think the first time we heard about that, or at least I heard about it, was last year with, who was it? Some video game developer.
Yeah, you really hear about it mostly in video games and software.
You
don't hear about it with respect to porn.
No,
so it's an interesting way to use Kickstarter in the sexual industry.
I know that they have it for everything, though. I know that Kickstarter... There's comic book creators who get their projects.
It'd be interesting to know
kickstarted.
if there's new types of dildos and vibrators and sex toys out there that are being kickstarted. We might want to look into that. I
bet there is.
What kind of new sex technologies out there? And any of you who are listening who are pending entrepreneurs, that might be a good way to go.
Yeah. We should get on Kickstarter. I almost can guarantee that there's stuff like that. There's everything on Kickstarter. It's a great place for up-and-coming inventors to get their projects out there without having to go to
venture
capitalists and raise that money first. So
what's this third article about?
The third article is about a dissolving female condom.
Now that sounds kind of interesting. I read the article as well, and basically what it is they're using technology that is used in tissue culture to make sort of like a scaffold with polymers that can degrade. And then the plan is to make this scaffold. In my head, I'm kind of imagining it to be kind of like a sponge.
Now you're the science girl. What do you mean a scaffold?
So imagine a bunch of fibers all weaved together to form like a sponge, like a porous material. And that's what a woman would put up her. And then inside that would be embedded medication.
Spermicides.
And they're thinking of if there's some kind of anti-HIV, antiviral, antibacterial agents that they can embed in this and then put it in the woman. The woman just inserts it. She has her sex, and then over time it'll dissolve and release the spermicides and whatever else to make sure that you don't get STDs. So it would prevent the man from having to wear any kind of condom.
It sounds interesting. It's still just something that the woman has to do. It's still very theoretical, and it's still just something else. I mean, is it any easier than taking the pill or other? I question if it's any easier.
The technology is definitely there to create the dissolving sponge. That is there because that's a technology that's already used in wound care, and it's already used in tissue care for burn victims, things like that, where they actually implant one of these devices in you, and then over time it'll dissolve and it'll slowly release your medication. That technology exists.
I mean, I guess,
but it's a matter of developing it in a way that it will release the spermicide correctly, or to release like something that's going to protect you from chlamydia. I mean, nothing works better than barrier protection, and this is not truly barrier protection.
The pill example was bad because I said, well, is it any better than a woman taking the pill? But that's strictly to prevent contraception.
To prevent pregnancy, yeah.
And this is being
trying
designed
to prevent everything.
to prevent everything.
Yeah, and
one-stop shop
essentially,
for
it's not going to stop the
prophylactics.
fluids. It wouldn't stop the fluids from getting in. What it would try to do is stop any agents that are in the fluids from getting to you. And so the technology has to be there to really develop the anti-whatevers, the anti-AIDS, anti-hepatitis, anti-whatever from getting into you. Personally, I think just not letting the fluid into you in the first place is a better way to protect yourself.
Well, this would be barrier-free sex, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have the condom in the way.
Right.
The actual male condom.
Right, but I think you're at a higher risk. So I think it would be something that you'd want to use if you were with a more permanent partner.
Yeah, well, see, I don't know about that, because if you're with a more permanent partner, you'd like to think that they don't have sexually transmittable diseases, unless you're
You'd like to think
a
it.
non-monogamous couple. If, for instance, with you, I wouldn't want to use this, or I would want to use this. I wouldn't want to use a condom with you.
Mm-hmm. It might be something to help get you through in between tests, per se. You know, if you get tested every 2 months or something and you're in between.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think it's probably not going to be as good as barrier protection. But who knows? It's still a long way off. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's
like I said,
I'm
the
sure it's
technology
years
for the
and years.
dissolving sponge is there, but really it's going to be
pretty.
Can they develop the anti-HIV, anti-whatever molecules that they'd embed on it?
It's a pretty cool piece of tech, and
it's a good idea.
We'll see what happens in a few years if we hear. It definitely won't be.
You say a few, it's at least 5, I would think, because they'd still have to get FDA approval. So
a few years away.
It's a while away.
Yeah, a few.
I think more than a few. And with that, we'll move on to our hot scenes.
Boobs! Boobs, boobs, boobs! Boobs and bush! Boobs and bush! Good boobs.
Those are good ones. We're like 35 seconds in.
Right,
Nice.
in the beginning credits.
Credit bush. You never get opening credit bush.
I know, that's so crazy.
So this week, our hot scene comes from the most recent season of Dexter. So we have to throw up a spoiler alert immediately if you have not seen Season 7, the most recent season of Dexter that just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And this scene in particular comes from episode 6, I believe.
Yep, it's called Do the Wrong Thing. And basically, to not talk too much about the season and just skip right to the scene, Dexter is taking this woman who's pretty hot, her name's Hannah, on what she believes is a date. And really what his intention is to kill her. Mm-hmm. But there's always been this, since the character was introduced, there's been this sort of cat and mouse game with him and her where they've been very flirtatious. And he takes her to a closed down Christmas amusement park and into a room that's going to be his kill room where he intends to kill her. It's set up all like a giant snow globe. And he strips her naked and saran wraps her to a table.
Dexter's usual MO.
Yeah, but if you don't watch Dexter, you need to know. His usual MO is he strips him down and saran wraps him to a table, and he has them, they're on her anesthetic, and then after they wake up, he talks to them a little bit before he kills them. So when she wakes up, he has the knife in his hand, and she looks him dead in the eye and says, "Do what you gotta do." And rather than kill her, he unwraps the saran wrap and just fucks her right there.
Yeah, the tension's really high. You think he's going to kill her, and all of a sudden he slams a knife down. It looks like he's going to kill her. He slams a knife down, cuts the plastic off of her, and they just fuck right there on the table. And it's a really, really hot scene.
It is. And I think it's just because of all the sexual tension.
And it had been built up for a few episodes between them, even though Dexter was stalking her. Not stalking, but doing his normal Dexter thing where he's vetting her, getting information on her, and then
confirming that she's the right person to kill.
Mm-hmm. And then she wakes up and he's just like, "Oh, I gotta bang this shit." For me, the culmination is when she looks him in the eye and says, "Do what you gotta do," and he fucks her. And that's what he had to do. They're both in really good shape. The scene is just hot. It's two pretty attractive people fucking right there. You don't see too much. I think you get some side boob from. I think
Hannah. There might be some Dexter ass too.
But still, it's just there's a shot. It was shot very well, very sexual. There's a shot from long ways down the table with Hannah laying there, and then all you just see is a V of her legs with Dexter just fucking, and
it's pretty hot.
It got us going. I know that.
So even if you're not watching Dexter, it's an episode worth checking out. Season 7, episode 6. Yeah, baby. So with that, we'll wrap up our Swinging Around, episode 5. Don't forget, you can reach us through email at swinginaround@gmail.com. No G at the end of swingin'. You can find us on Twitter, and our handle is at swinginaround. Again, no G. And then, of course, you can find us on Feedburner and iTunes. Please give us a rating or send us email. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah. We've had a few people already shoot us some emails and give us their thoughts on the show. We'd love to hear from many, many more. So please keep those emails coming, comments, anything. We'd love to hear it. All right, everyone. Stay sexy and stay swinging. Shoot, what's my ending?
Stay sexy and
stay
swinging.